Hello, in this video we'll be learning about hosting. This video is a hosting tutorial for beginners, all basics covered in the 2021 edition. How to host a website, the complete beginner guide. Let's begin. Hosting a website simply means making sure that your website can be accessible on the World Wide Web. This is usually done in one of the two ways. You can pay for hosting with a service provider, or you can host it yourself at your own server. We'll look into both methods in this article. How to host a site using a hosting provider. Using a service provider is the simplest way of hosting a website. You can pay a small monthly fee and rely on the service provider to take care of all your equipment, infrastructure, and other associated needs. What are the pros of hosting with a service provider? It usually is cheaper, support is often readily available, no need for hardware maintenance, we have got higher reliability. And what are the cons of a service provider? Cons of hosting with a service provider are that there might be some service restrictions and there might be fewer choices in hosting locations. So here are the steps to host a website with a hosting service provider. Number 1, we need to decide which types of websites to build. Number 2, compare web hosting types. Number 3, select hosting providers and plans. Number 4, buy domain and hosting plans. Number 5, move your site to a server. Now we need to decide which type of website you are building. There are two main types of websites, static and dynamic. Simple static websites can be built using what you see is what you get, WYSIWYG, and then transferred over to the hosting account. Dynamic sites are mainly applicable driven and makes use of scripts, databases, and other tools to generate some portions of the site on the fly. WordPress and Joomla are examples of common content management system apps that are popular today. Others of them are Magento and PrestaShop and are used for e-commerce websites. Second, compare the web hosting types. Much like there are many different categories of cars, website hosting also comes in various flavors. For example, shared hosting is the cheapest and the easiest to manage. They are akin to the compact cars of the world. As the type of web hosting scales up, so too does the cost involved and often the complexity of managing the hosting account. For example, in VPS hosting, you will need to manage not just the hosting details but also the environment and that it is being hosted in. Three types of web host. There are, in a nutshell, the most common types of hosting are shared hosting, VPS or cloud hosting, and the third one is the dedicated server hosting. Now WordPress, PrestaShop, Magento, WooCommerce hosting. It is important to know that web applications and web hosting are not the same thing. Some web hosts offer plans such as WordPress hosting, PrestaShop hosting, WooCommerce hosting, and so on. These are not really hosting types but intended to attract laymen who may not be familiar with the real web hosting terms. These hosting offers merely entice users with the names of popular web applications. The type of web hosting you will need is typically defined by the volume of the traffic you expect on your website or any specific needs your website might have. Most websites which are just starting out will typically have low traffic volume and shared hosting accounts will be fine for those. Most shared accounts will also come with the application installers, but to ensure that your needs are met, ask the host of the application you want to install on the account you are looking at. Let us understand what a MySQL database is. A MySQL database is required if you plan to run a site using a CMS. One WordPress installation requires one MySQL database. A CMS like WordPress uses the MySQL database to store and retrieve data to dynamically generate web pages. Not using a CMS would mean you'll need to manually update your articles to a server. Static sites are usually best if you do not plan on adding more than 5 to 10 web pages on your website if you do not plan on updating your website very often. A web hosting control panel allows you to configure your website. Number 1 is configuring email, wherein you need to add or remove the email address, create quota, redirect email, spam prevention, etc. Number 2 is to add or remove the website accounts. Number 3 is to configure the FTP accounts. Number 4 is to work with databases, and number 5 is to configure cron jobs to run at specific intervals. Number 6 is to check the traffic statistics, and number 7 is to manage the files, to add remove website files using file manager. Check usage statistics, check your bandwidth and storage details. Install services like WordPress, Joomla, forums, and other software programs. Configure a SSL certificate. And lastly, it's backup and restoring of the account. Since the control panel allows you to do all of these important activities, it is crucial that it's functional and user friendly.